To this now, the South African business in the U.S. has welcomed the extension of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. The extension for 1 year lapses on December 31st and will apply retroactively since September last year. AgriSA has also welcomed this development, but what does it mean for the road ahead? We're now joined by Neil Diamond, Chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. A very good evening to you, Mr. Diamond. Thank you so much for your time. So, the statement that you've released as the Chamber says that the signing of this legislation provides critical continuity and also certainty, particularly for businesses, workers, and also, that are engaged in U.S.-Africa trade. Perhaps let's start there.
Thank you, and good evening to you and to your viewers in South Africa. This is a very welcome and stabilizing decision for South African business in the United States. President Trump's signing of the AGOA extension restores certainty after several weeks and months of uncertainty around South Africa's eligibility. This extension through December 31st with retroactive effect from September definitely ensures continuity in the US-Africa trade relationship. But what does this mean?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask that.
This is not just a legislative framework, and it's not just theory. It directly affects jobs, supply chains, and investment decisions. Over the past weeks and months, uncertainty have created real concerns for companies doing investments, long-term contracts, and workers whose livelihood depends on export industries. The decision now removes the cloud that allows business to move forward with confidence, and it has definitely restored business confidence in the US-South Africa trade relationship. AGOA provides duty-free access to the US markets for many South African exporters. And those are in key industries like automotive manufacturing, agricultural and agro-processing, wine and value-added food products, industrial and manufactured components. And in total, there's over 100,000 South Africans working just in the automotive industry that are direct beneficiaries through the employment of AGOA. So the exports are deeply integrated into US supply chains, and this supports both jobs and the economy on both sides of the Atlantic. So it's mutually beneficial for the South African and the US economy.
And two questions arise from that. The first one is there are calls for this, for the AGOA to, in fact, be renewed long-term, as some say that this could provide much-needed certainty. But when you look at the current climate, right, is that a possibility?
I think it definitely speaks to the fact that the United States take the relationship, the trade and economic relationship with Africa very serious. Let's be honest, South Africa's eligibility was one of our single biggest concerns over the last few months, but it seems that South Africa remains eligible under the current AGOA determinations. But future eligibility is not automatic. It reflects on compliance with statutory requirements, market-based principles, trade openness, as well as the rule of law and governance. I think the continued eligibility sends a strong signal of confidence to markets, but at the same time, the political relationship between Pretoria and Washington, D.C. remains a concern for us. Business is, however, very confident that in this environment, that at least the United States have signaled that trade with Africa is important, it's mutually beneficial, and should be considered in that light.
I'm going to get into the relations in just a moment, but there's another question. How much of a challenge have the tariffs also been when it comes to the benefits of AGOA?
I think it has been a significant challenge. The reciprocal tariffs is something that was introduced by President Donald Trump in terms of a US-first approach. And I think we need to focus also on the comments of Ambassador Jamie Greer, that is the US Special Representative on Trade. Ambassador Greer placed emphasis on greater reciprocity, expanded market access for US companies, and modernization of AGOA in line with an American first trade policy. AGOA will at least assist many South African exporters to reduce the impact that the reciprocal trade tariffs have had on their businesses. We have seen in the United States a steep increase in South African products due to the tariffs, and at least AGOA would mitigate some of those increases. But it just brings us back to a net effect of basically zero. What we now rely on is Minister Parks-Tau and the team from the Department of Trade and Industry to meet with their counterparts, Ambassador Greer and the US Trade representatives, to negotiate a bilateral trade that would be to the collective benefit of both US businesses and South African businesses and set the tone for future economic engagement between our two countries.
As a final one then, you've expressed concern about the relations between the two countries, and many other people have done so. And I wonder, what are you actively doing about this? Are you seeking the audience of government? How is business treating this in the US?
So business is positive about this. We're taking a pragmatic and timely approach to the fact that AGOA is going to be benefiting South African business in the United States. But as business, we are concerned about the relationship and the ongoing tensions. We still do not have an ambassador in the United States. And as business, we'll be sending a delegation next month to meet with Minister Ronald Lamola to raise our concerns with the minister. We are very happy with the work that Minister Parks-Tau have done, but we are concerned that the overall political relationship may have long-term economic ramifications. And in this regard, we continue to call on the South African government and the US government to sit down to find a mutual ground in terms of which we could re-establish the diplomatic relationship that we've enjoyed for so many years with the United States. This is and remains a mutually economic beneficial relationship. We cannot deny that.
Mr. Diamond, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That was Neil Diamond, Chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the US, live for us there from the United States, and speaking about some of the issues around the signing of the AGOA legislation, extending it until December. But on that note, let's take a breather.